This is the third video to section 3.5. We're going to look at our square root function here, which is given by this first graph. And we're going to take a look and see what happens when we apply a negative to our function and when we apply a negative within the domain or within the parentheses of our function. Let's start out once again with our 3 points. So if our new function here is negative f of x, that means we're going to put a negative in front of our square root. So our 3 points here, the negative square root of 0 is still going to be 0. The negative square root of 1 is going to be negative 1, and the negative square root of 4 is going to be negative 2. Let's take a moment to plot those points. And let's go ahead and draw our graph. Notice when we applied a negative in front of the square root, look what happened to our graph. We had a flip or a reflection with respect to the x-axis. Let's take a look at what happens when we plug our negative inside the function. Once again, we'll consider our 3 points. If we take the square root of negative 0, we're still going to get 0. Taking the square root of a negative 1 will be 1. And the square root of a negative 4, which of course becomes positive 4, will be 2. Plotting these points, we'll get this, and then we can draw our graph. Now let's take a look. What happened to this graph from this graph? Well, we had a reflection across the y-axis. So when we apply a negative inside of our function, inside of the parentheses, we have a reflection over the y-axis. But when we apply our negative to the entire function, we have a reflection over the x-axis. So let's fill in this chart here. Reflection over the x-axis and a reflection about the y-axis. Let's go ahead and apply everything we've learned in section 3.5 so far. Let's consider the graph of the absolute value of x. Do you remember what that looks like? If not, it looks something like this. So what would happen if we wanted to shift our graph down 4 places? That means we would take our function and we would subtract 4. Now, for letter B, what would happen if we wanted to shift our graph 2 places to the right? Well, the side-to-side shift is when we worked with the inside of the parentheses, but please remember, if we're going to the right, we have to write the opposite, not +2, but -2. What if we wanted to reflect our function across the x-axis? We just learned that in this video. We're going to apply a negative to our entire function. But for letter D, let's say we wanted to horizontally compress by a factor of 1/4. Now be careful, a factor of 1/4. Some of you might be looking at the compression like this. That might be a little bit confusing to you so far, But maybe if we can review this in function form, when we have a function and we're subtracting a constant, that's a downward shift. When we have a function and we're subtracting 2, that's going to be a shift 2 units to the right. And for letter C, our function would look like this. And remember, letter D can be a little bit tricky, but if we're multiplying the inside, that means we're going to have a horizontal shrink. And that concludes the third video to section 3.5.